A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajeem. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Assalamu alaikum and welcome to tonight's live show on Imam Hussein TV. You may note 2 weeks ago we discussed part 1 of Islamic divorce. Part 1, Islamic divorce, actually led up to what the hardships are or were that are faced by people undergoing a potential divorce in the future. What rights they have or have not had, as it were, custody battles in the future, but also forced marriages. In the second part, which was last week, we discussed what actually entails the divorce process and also what the trials and tribulations are by certain individuals throughout the world. We've been getting absolutely amazing responses. Sweden, Iraq, Bahrain, Sudan as well. We've also had calls and emails from India, Pakistan, South America, as I mentioned last week. And so this week is the third part 3, to discuss Islamic divorce. What exactly happens on the first day after the divorce? Exactly what is undergoing through children? What trials do they face? What are the hardships that individuals face after the divorce? And so with me tonight, I am privileged to have once again with me Dr. Ammar Nakshwani. Assalamu alaikum, Dr.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.
It's an honor once again to have you on live, as it were, onto this show.
Thank you.
We've had tremendous responses, as it were, throughout the world. WhatsApp messages, telephone calls, brothers and sisters, as it were. We've been inundated by messages and queries regarding your expertise, as it were, on fiqh, with regards to Islamic divorce now. So without further ado, I'm just going to start off, as it were, with regards to the first question now that's come through. How soon can one get married after a divorce? I mean, what is the criteria for both a man and a woman?
It's a very interesting period when all of a sudden you're back to independence again. For some, it's extremely difficult to take. For others, they've waited years to have that independence because they feel that they were in the most difficult relationship for different reasons. Now, in terms of when one is speaking legally, let's say, for example, the marriage has not been consummated, then that person can move on straight away.
Okay.
And as we know, if the marriage has been consummated, there is a discussion concerning the beginning of the third menstrual cycle, for example, as from that period onwards, when a person can now move on.
Yeah.
That idda period has to be observed.
Right.
And we stress on this because there are many who, as soon as they get divorced, imagine that that's it. The moment the divorce formula is pronounced, then I can now move on in my life, even move on physically with somebody else.
And walk away.
Yeah, and what I think many people don't realize is that no, you have to observe that period known as the idda period, the waiting period.
Sure.
And that's normally seen for 2 reasons.
Right.
The first reason is possible pregnancy. Now, you may have started to plan that I'm gonna, this is the end of our marriage and I'm moving on and you know what, I'm gonna build my life again.
Yeah.
And you find out a couple of months into the idda period that you're pregnant. In a way, this could, for example, result in a reconciliation.
Yes.
Maybe now that you are pregnant with this baby, and we know that Islamic law does not allow abortion except in cases, for example, such as the mother's life being in danger or an unbearable social harm that could even lead to the death of somebody. But when we're looking at this issue, for example, you find that some have reconciled when there has been news of a pregnancy.
Yes.
Now, I know that there are people out there who will say, well, there's no way I'm going to be pregnant. I made sure that I looked after all the measures that were needed and the contraceptives were taken and the morning after pill and so on. But you never know. And the reality is that that pregnancy can happen. If that pregnancy happens, then that iddah period may extend to the day the baby is born.
Right.
Then the understanding of the iddah period also is before you straight away think of moving on, you may in that couple of month period suddenly remember the good times you had with your ex-husband.
Absolutely.
In reality, there is still this recognition of him being your husband, for example. And at the same time, this can happen with the husband for the wife, where the husband is adamant that it's time for me now to move on. But there is a sense, where is she? Where's the laughs we used to have? Although, you know, we may have had moments where we're laughing, moments she's nagging, I'm tired, I'm lazy. But I still now appreciate the fact that I may never get anyone like her again. And so in that iddah period, there is a possibility of reconciliation.
Yes.
Many parents, sadly, do not encourage their sons and daughters to rethink the divorce in the iddah period.
Right, right.
That's possibly why the Quran stressed that, listen, even if you've divorced your wife, you keep her in your house, you keep maintaining her for that period of the iddah.
You could change your mind?
You could change your mind, and maybe you too. There are some out there, by the way, who sexually, they have no problems with one another. But for example, when it came to living together in terms of, for example, the intellectual level, the religious level, they felt there was disparities.
Yes, yes.
And they still remain amicable. But then you find that there are others who go through that iddah period and decide that, listen, iddah period's finished and I'm still adamant on my decision.
Yes.
And then that person or that couple are both able to move on.
Yeah. I mean, viewers, just to put things into perspective and context, Dr. Sayyid Ammar Nakshwani last week and prior to that as well mentioned about the factors of iddah, the observance of it, separation, the positive sides to separation. We had also a question by a sister asking, well, can she actually divorce someone because her husband, you know, is not practicing? And I think, you know, Dr. Sayyid Ammar Nakshwani has, you know, beautifully and eloquently put that together. So we're looking to really put everything in sync now today as well, you know, to really summarize everything going on. So Dr. Sayyid Ammar, Hamida from Sudan, which is an interesting text message. She wants to get married to her brother in a community. She's been divorced for 5 months. But she's a little bit wary of what people might think about her, as it were. It's, you know, what sort of, is she going to be looked upon as being, well, she's cold, look at her, she's just moved on quickly.
Yep.
What do you have to say about that, as it were?
Well, firstly, salams to all the viewers from the
Excellent.
Sudan, you know, many great lovers of the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam in Sudan. With someone like Hamida's situation, firstly, it works both ways. Number one, if you found somebody who you want to get married to a few months after you're divorced.
Yeah, 5 months.
5 months, she's saying.
Yes.
She's completed her iddah period.
Yes.
There is somebody in the community, maybe, and there are some who want to move on quickly. There are some who want to get married straight away, or will tell people that, listen, I'm ready to move on, I'm ready to get married.
Yeah.
Just because I may have had a very difficult relationship, or I may have been with someone who we just didn't click, does not mean that I don't want to move on. And our community should not be judging somebody in the situation, because, you know, the easiest judgment that one can make is that, well, you know what, she probably has had her eyes on this person for months, and that's how they got married. But the community, you cannot judge. And ultimately, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the best of planners. We should think good of our fellow Muslim brethren.
Absolutely.
And so if you hear that Hamida, who got divorced a number of months ago, has now moved on, that's between Hamida, her husband, and the Lord.
Yes.
It's sad, and the Quran kept on stressing this to the nascent Muslim community morally. When it started to give us the verses in Surah Al-Hujurat, Surah 49 of the Quran, such as يا أيها الذين آمنوا اجتنبوا كثيرا من الظن إن بعض الظن إثم.
Yes.
Oh, you who believe, avoid suspicion. For suspicion in some cases can be a sin.
Sin.
A person may, and I don't blame Hamida, because Hamida is probably thinking, I'm going to move on, because I'm moving on so quickly, the community is going to say, how could she just move on so quickly from her marriage? That marriage may have been dead years ago. There are different types of marriages. There are some which break up and there are really regrets.
Right, right.
Both sides regret, but the circumstances do not help. There are other types of marriages where the people had died 10, 15 years ago.
Okay.
They were together because of the kids, for example.
Right.
Or publicly they had to show that there are some families who will come out publicly and say, we never divorce. We've never ever had a divorce.
In our family, yes.
Yeah, but buddy, you saying you've never had a divorce in your family does not mean that divorce A isn't allowed, or that B, divorce doesn't happen.
Yeah.
Or that divorce may not be right in a certain situation. So there are marriages out there which are dead.
Yes.
So that person who may move on, they deserve to find happiness. They deserve to be around someone who they can actually enjoy their life with. You know, there are certain sisters out there, for example, they want to be in a marriage where they can enjoy, you know, certain sports with their partner. Want to go out to certain places with their partner, holiday with their partner, and so on.
And dine, as you mentioned.
And dine, for example, and so on.
You know,
and they may not have had that in their marriage. Now, when they get divorced, there's this assumption that, well, you've got divorced now, so you should stay away from marriage or take time out. No, if a person decides that straight away I want to get married and there's someone suitable, then why not?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, alhamdulillah. Sister Faiza, she's a convert from China. She's texted in saying, my ex will not stop harassing me or he keeps searching my private life since we've divorced. He's even threatened to hurt any future partner. What do you advise, given the fact that there may be some sort of level of sensitivity that she's trying to exercise because of kids involved as well?
I don't think any post-divorce period was ever going to be easy.
Right.
You're always going to have the possibility that you may be involved with someone who's still bitter about what's happened.
Okay.
Bitter, I don't know what this context is. But that person may still be bitter that, you know, why did we get divorced? Why have you divorced me? And cannot take seeing you, for example, moving on, or even in states of happiness.
Yeah.
Now, don't get me wrong. Sometimes those who are the happiest on social media are actually the ones who are the most hurt.
Right.
But they may display a sense of happiness because it gives them some sort of solace.
Yeah.
And maybe can be used as a shield.
Right.
For people out there who keep asking them, "Are you okay? Are you okay?" But I think in this situation, it has happened. There are certain people who will stalk you.
Yeah.
Don't forget anything, they'll stalk you. They don't want you to go anywhere.
Okay.
And when this person is threatening, the reality is someone has to get involved.
Right. Okay.
And we don't want to resort to police interference straight away. Okay. Although a threat is something to be taken seriously when someone says, listen, I'm going to come and beat whoever you're going out with, because it could just be a case that someone's family member or relative has come home and this person assumes that you're in a relationship with them and can end up being violent.
True.
So I think if one is still in contact with their ex's family or knows somebody who's a good friend, to have a word and to say that, look, firstly, Islamically, this is not moral. Okay. Rationally speaking, the masses, you know, will never accept such behavior.
Yeah.
And we've seen, you know, it's interesting how sometimes there are depictions of this in film, in Arabic films, Bollywood, Hollywood. You'll see depictions of this where there are people who cannot take the fact that they were with somebody who has moved on.
Yeah.
I think this period requires patience and also consultation of the people of wisdom to try and interfere and to have a word. A word has to be had, because if this person, I know some will say, well, it's better that I just don't do anything. But then this person will always feel that, look, no one can mess with me or no one can talk to me. Sometimes a person has to get involved and have a polite word to say that, look, Sharia-wise, this is now ended. You may have not been happy. Trust your Lord and don't keep this level of harassment continue.
Okay, alhamdulillah.
The Quran says, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, وَلَا تَجَسَّسُوا. And do not spy on one another. If this person truly is interfering into someone's private life, spying on their lives, looking through the window, seeing what's happening, who's moving in, who's moving out, this is, again, far away from the morals espoused by the religion.
Okay, alhamdulillah, thank you for that, Sayyidina. We've got a text message from Sophie via WhatsApp. She's texted from Sweden, so viewers do keep up the ratings and do call in. So now her question is that she's divorced. She has 2 young boys. Their dad doesn't ever want to see them now. What do I explain to them is her question. They ask about their friends' fathers and why is it that the real father is showing no interest in meeting them, as if it's almost like her fault. So what can we advise on this, as it were? I mean,
this is probably the most difficult situation.
Okay.
When a divorce has happened, one side is extremely bitter.
Right.
And takes the level of anger to even
extreme.
saying, I never want to see my sons again, as in this story. It
Yes.
breaks the heart.
Yeah.
Because Islamically, he still has to maintain. There's a period of maintenance for the wife and that. Okay, let's say that period is done.
Okay.
And then after that, he has to still maintain those children of his. And the different schools of Islam give different opinions
Okay.
about...
Length, as it were.
Yeah, as in some will say, for example, your daughter you have to maintain until marriage, whereas your sons you maintain until adolescence.
Right.
So you're the guardian of your daughter until she gets married. You still have to maintain her, whereas with your sons. So there are different opinions that have been posited legally across the board in the Islamic schools. But a person, it's their responsibility to maintain. Okay, you're not going to necessarily be living with your wife. You're unhappy that your wife divorced you, yes, and that the kids, for example, are with her. That doesn't mean that your Islamic responsibilities are to be thrown out the window.
No, not at all.
Now, this lady, what does she explain? And that is extremely difficult to, she's got these sons, for example.
2 boys.
And when she's got these sons, and she has to sit with them. Now, the earlier years may be easy, but there will come a time where these younger ones are going to be asking that, look, all my friends have got their dads coming to pick them up from school. Where's dad?
Yeah.
What happened with dad?
Sure.
And it's going to be a difficult situation, and it can either be addressed by the mother herself, or it can be addressed, for example, by a close family member.
Okay.
But most often it's going to have to be on the mother's shoulders to explain.
Yeah, I mean, it's quite common in the Western society, lots of children have grown up and are growing up without knowing their fathers, as it were. So it seems like this is maybe now moving into some Islamic circles, perhaps, and...
Yeah, it rarely happens. But when it does happen, for a lady to have her sons, or son and daughter, for example, or daughters, and not have the ex maintain any contact, and not have the ex even try and call on a birthday at least.
Right.
Just on a birthday. You see, it could also work vice versa, and this is the problem sometimes.
Yeah.
It could also be that the mother can instill a certain even hate towards the husband as well, in the way that the kids will perceive the father. So you've got 2 sides. You've got that father who's negligent.
Yeah.
And that is the predominant case.
True.
But then you've also got sometimes those mothers who had their chance to allow the kids to have a relationship with the ex, but because that ex did not treat me the way I deserve to be treated, therefore I'm going to take out my venom on that.
Absolutely, absolutely, and
this is something heartbreaking.
That resentment, that animosity is now actually taken out on the children.
Exactly,
and they're suffering.
The children in many cases don't know what's happened.
No.
We're not talking in the teens. Let's say the younger ones don't know what's happened. There may still be the odd baba, mama at that young age don't let what's happened between you two cloud the possibility of an interaction. You see, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala muqallib al-qulub.
Yeah.
Ya Allah, Ya Rahman, Ya Rahim, Ya muqallib al-qulub. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one who rotates the hearts. Our hearts are constantly rotating. Sometimes your softness, not for the person, your ex, but rather because you want them to maintain some sort of relationship. And some might turn around and say, do you know, my ex was this, my ex was that. Okay, no problem. Even the worst of people, when it comes to the kids, softens.
Yes.
There's gangsters out there. Gangsters. But with their kids, you see him dote on the kids in a way, this guy...
Like teddy bear.
Like teddy bear. So both sides have a responsibility.
True, true.
But as for the father figure, maintenance-wise, that kid, until adolescence at the very least, there is a certain expectation of spending on those children.
Am I correct in saying that one who refrains, as it were, from seeing his or even her children is actually causing a form of dhulm, an oppression?
Yes, yes. It's definitely an oppression.
Yeah, yeah. Because a lot of people are just, I think, just don't see it like that.
The Quran
they see it as freedom.
That our children are the zina of this world.
Yeah, goodness.
But our children are also a fitna. Zina,
right.
Fitna. If I'm not mistaken, so if you're looking in surahs of the Quran, Surah Al-Kahf and Surah Al-Taghabun.
Okay.
One is saying that your kids are a zina for you, a source of pride for you.
Right.
Possibly a source of intercession for you.
Inshallah.
Likewise, they're going to be a trial from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That I gave you wealth, I gave you health, I gave you education, I gave you family. Those kids, you couldn't call to say happy birthday.
Yeah.
Those kids, you couldn't just make an effort to say that, you know what, I want to take them out, for example, on the day of Eid. And I want both sides to listen as well, because sometimes the in-laws can cause even more difficulty.
Yes.
So you may have this one, for example, the wife, she may be very ready. And then she may have, for example, her dad or mom telling her, don't let him see them, don't let him get near them. Okay, hold on a minute, I'm sorry, who's got married? Why are you the one who's now giving the advice? You know, it was only recently someone said to me that they have a daughter-in-law, and the daughter-in-law, of course, married the son, and they're a few years into the relationship, but she's not happy with the way the daughter-in-law dresses. You're not happy, it's not your marriage.
It's not marriage.
So why are you getting involved? It's not your marriage.
Yeah.
Your son-in-law chose her. Likewise, when your daughter and your old son-in-law, when it comes to the kids, don't start making things difficult. It's not your marriage.
It's not your marriage.
Your daughter-in-law may end up being pressured. So there's a number of scenarios that emerge.
Yeah.
Not just the negligence of those fathers, and there are a number of them, who when they lock off, they lock off. It's as if those kids did not exist in their life. And years later they regret. And alhamdulillah, God has blessed me that I've been able to reconcile fathers with sons on a number of occasions, with God's blessings. And it's one of the best feelings I've ever had in my life, when I've been able to speak to a father, speak to their son, who haven't spoken, in some cases, for 20 years. I remember one case, 6 years, other cases, 9 years. And when that reconciliation has come, that father regretted. But that father will always have a point as well, that there was a moment when it could have been done, but you were adamant. I'm talking of those who the divorce went through. But sadly, there are even those out there who didn't even let a divorce go through and never saw their kids again. Can you imagine? There are those out there who sadly have been so unjust to their wife. They tell her, I'm not going to give you a divorce. And nor am I interested in seeing those kids that you have at home. So she's not divorced,